I didn't hear the knock at first. Brides are supposed to float on a day like this, to be all veil and soft music and laughter that photographs well. I was a list of tasks in a silk robe, a heartbeat with mascara, a person pretending she could breathe. The makeup artist had just left, the photographer hovered, and the hairstylist was pinning the last stubborn strand when my phone buzzed on the vanity.subject, "Before you say I do." From no-reply at ledgerlight.co. I almost ignored it. My phone had been a grenade for weeks, but the subject line felt like a hand on my shoulder. I tapped. There were 6 attachments. Screenshots. A bank transfer scheduled for 2 p.m. today, 2 hours after our ceremony. Moving $87,400 from our joint savings home fund into an LLC I'd never heard of, Pier and Pine Consulting. The signature on the transfer authorization was mine, except it wasn't. The A leaned wrong, like someone had seen my name 1,000 times and still misunderstood how it starts. Under the screenshots, a line of text: "He did this to me too. Don't let him do it to you. S." The room around me stayed in motion, but inside my chest, everything took a step back. I heard Mia's voice in the hallway, my best friend, my maid of honor, the girl who knew every version of me, laughing at something like a bell in a cathedral. But the laugh sounded different now, Metallica. I looked at the clock, las 10:41 a.m. The ceremony at 1. Photos at 12. First look at 11. Everything okay? The photographer asked, polite concern shaped like a question mark. Perfect, I lied. Can I have a minute? The door clicked. Silence came in like weather. I opened the second attachment, a PDF, an addendum to the prenup I'd already bled over. A one-page writer called Exhibit C slipped in after the final review, stating that any funds contributed by Ethan prior to marriage, including gifts to the home fund, would be returned to him within 30 days of the wedding, with processing facilitated by Pier and Pine Consulting. The e-signature block had my name. The timestamp was the night I fell asleep on the couch after writing vows to a future I thought was ours. I closed my eyes. There was a copper taste in my mouth, like panic had decided to take up smoking. I wanted to call Ethan. I wanted to call Mia. I wanted to call my mother, who had flown in yesterday and cried when she saw me in the dress, telling me I looked like my grandmother who got married in a fog of lilacs and stayed married 59 years. Instead, I hit reply. "Who are you?" I typed. "How did you get this?" The response arrived before my finger left the glass. "I'm Sophie. I'm his sister. Check the last attachment." My hands shook as I opened it. A photo of a Ethan's desk. My desk. The desk in our apartment. We had argued about because he wanted clean lines and I wanted a drawer for everything covered in papers. The addendum, the bank transfer form. A notary seal with Mia Turner stamped like a bruise. A knock again, gentler. Ava, Mia's voice, muffled by the door. "You decent. Your mom wants a picture." I slipped the phone into the pocket of my robe and turned the lock. "1 minute. Do I need to pick that lock?" She joked. "You know I can." She could. Mia could talk a door into opening. She had charmed us out of parking tickets, into restaurants, through security lines, in airports where gods live. She could turn any no into a not yet. I had loved her since we were 12 and she let me cheat off her. Algebra quiz because I'd been up all night with my mom's migraine. Friendship like ours wasn't earned, it was inherited. Or so I thought. I sent one last line to Sophie. "Meet me behind the greenhouse before the first look. 11 sharp, 3 dots. I'll be there." I set the phone down and looked at myself. I didn't look like a woman about to detonate her life. I looked like a magazine cover of a certain kind of happiness. "Open up, bride," Mia sang softly, and something in me cracked just enough to let light through. When I met Ethan 2 years ago, he was a storm I thought I could read. We collided in a coffee shop during a rain that made the city look honest. He bought me a replacement latte for the one his elbow had sacrificed and apologized 4 times. Once with his voice. Twice with his eyes. Once with a napkin he folded like origami. He had a kindness that seemed to know how to walk into a room, Before he did, I didn't ask for his last name until the third date because I was too busy memorizing what it felt like to be heard. He told me about his childhood like weather reports. There were storms, but somehow they always missed the house. He was careful with words. He called his sister complicated, his mother traditional, his father absent, which is a way to be present without being there. He worked in finance but talked about numbers as if they were characters in a novel. Money is just a story, he said. Most people don't know, they can write it differently. I thought he had rewritten mine. We split rent. He insisted on starting the home fund together, so we don't feel like we're keeping score, he said. I liked that. I liked a man who understood fairness, felt good in the bones. The first time something felt off, it was small enough to ignore. We were signing a vendor contract, and he said, I'll handle the boring stuff, which turned out to include clauses that made my stomach stiffen. It's just boilerplate, he told me, and kissed the part of my forehead that believed men when they used words like that. The second time, he pushed for a prenup I didn't need but accepted my mother's house is in my name. My grandmother's ring sits quiet in a bank box because it seemed adult. It protects us both, he said. It protects our love from everything else. He was good at sentences like that. They sounded like doors opening, until you realized they opened into rooms that belonged to him. I told Mia everything. She said Ethan was a grown-up, and after years of dating boys in older shoes, I believed her. Mia met men the way dolphins meet boats, curious, playful, unafraid of speed. She introduced me to Ethan's sister at a gallery opening, called Sophie, a mystery with a smile that implied she liked mysteries best when they belonged to other people. Sophie hugged me, like someone who's always careful hugging anything breakable. Her eyes were the same color as Ethan's, something between green and a story you tell yourself. But hers held a caution I read as shyness. Welcome to the circus, she said, almost too low to hear. At the time, I thought she meant the family. I didn't know she meant me. The venue had a greenhouse tucked behind the main hall, a glass spine in the garden where light behaved. At 10:59, I walked there alone, lifting the hem of my dress so it didn't mistake dew for lace. The air smelled like lemons and thin hope. Sophie was already waiting, hands in the pockets of a trench coat that made her look like someone the city confides in. She wasn't wearing makeup. Up close, she was beautiful in the way buildings are beautiful when you notice the lines they have held up for years. I didn't think you'd come, she said. I'm still deciding if I did, I answered. She handed me an envelope. Inside, hard copies of what I'd seen, plus more. Emails between Ethan and someone at Pier and Pine Pierce. Actually, the C had been added in a way that made the word look more respectable, discussing liquidity after the event. A calendar reminder titled Post Vows Transfer. A copy of my driver's license, the one I'd sent the planner for bar service. Attached to an internal note, use for ID verification. Ava will be too busy to approve in-app. Why are you doing this? I asked, because the place where gratitude should go felt occupied. Sophie's mouth lifted. Not the way people smile when happy, but the way they do when they've rehearsed this expression to make it look like something it isn't. Because he did it to me, she said, not marriage, money. He pulled from my account when our mother got sick, called it borrowing with intent. Paid it back with interest, he told everyone about, and then he learned he could make debts into games. She paused. You're not a game to me, and Mia? I asked. The name tasted different. Sophie flinched, an eyelash of movement. Mia notarized the addendum. She works part-time with a mobile notary service. He's good at making what he wants look like what everyone needs. The greenhouse glass reflected us. Two women practicing the art of not breaking. Behind the glass, a lemon tree held small suns in its leaves, and I wanted to climb it and live there. I can stop the transfer, Sophie said, but I can't tell you what to do about the rest. The rest was a dress, and vows, and a room full of people who had chosen their outfits to match a future I was now the sole owner of. The rest was my mother's eyes. The rest was the soft, complicated fact that I loved Ethan. Not perfectly, not even well, lately. But I loved the version of him that sat in a coffee shop and folded a napkin like he thought he could fix anything gentle. "Thank you," I said. The words felt too small to hold what she'd done. "If he asks, he won't," she said. "He thinks truth is a runway he can strut down and no one will notice it's made of fog." We stood for one more minute, two statues pretending they were women, then walked back. At 11:09, the photographer found me, and the first look happened. Anyway, if you've never done a first look, it feels like standing on the edge of something on purpose. He waited under an arch of eucalyptus, his back to me. The camera made a sound like a second hand learning to sing. I touched his shoulder. He turned, and for a breath, I forgot the envelope. I forgot even my name. He looked like a promise I had made myself a long time ago, that I would be loved and seen and kept. He said, and didn't finish, because finishing would have meant choosing a word. And Ethan didn't like to be pinned to words when silence worked harder for him. "You too," I said, even though he looked exactly like a man who believed he would always get to keep the good china even when he broke it. His hands were warm. He kissed my forehead, the exact spot, the old ritual, and I had to press my tongue to my teeth to keep from asking him not to. The photographer circled, capturing us from angles we had never considered loving ourselves at. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, because even liars are capable of care if it serves the moment. "You seem in your head." "I'm getting married," I said. "I think that requires a head." He laughed, genuine enough to confuse me into remembering the boy he had been when he still forgot where he'd set his keys and didn't mind being found. We moved through the choreography, family photos that felt like group projects. The bridesmaids, adjusting nothing that needed adjusting, the groomsmen trying to decide if jokes were allowed this early. Mia tucked a strand behind my ear and whispered, "Perfect." Like it was both a compliment and an order. When we lined up for the processional, my mother squeezed my hand hard enough to remind me the body is how love speaks when it's scared. "You can still turn around," she said. Not because she knew, but because mothers sometimes say the thing the air tells them to. "I know," I said. "I'm walking forward." I didn't tell her that walking forward and walking away sometimes start the same. The doors opened. The aisle was an idea someone had stretched into fabric and flowers and a price tag I still hadn't looked at closely, because that's how weddings survive. People stood. The organ tried to imitate God. I walked. Ethan's face held the right awe in the right places. Mia dabbed at an imaginary tear. Sophie stared at a point on the wall as if that was where heaven kept its receipts. We stood under the eucalyptus and a sky that had agreed to behave. I felt my pulse in my fingertips. The officiant smiled, the smile officiants learn, the one that says, "I have done this 100 times and still find it holy." He asked for vows. Ethan went first. He spoke in paragraphs that had been rehearsed to the edge of spontaneity, about finding home in a coffee shop, about my laugh sounding like something doors recognize, about building a life where our problems would be small because our love was big. People sniffled. My mother used a tissue like a flag surrendering to joy. He said, "I promise to protect you." And the word protect hit the eucalyptus like a small bird. When it was my turn, I looked at my paper. The vow I had written lived there, waiting. It was full of soup and storms and the kind of loyalty that wears a crown even when it doesn't want one. It was beautiful. It was a lie if I said it now. I folded the paper. I looked at Ethan, then I looked at Sophie. She didn't nod. She didn't need to. The truth was standing between us in a dress. "Wrote a vow," I said, and my voice did the thing voices do when they decide not to tremble, "but I'm going to say a different one." People shifted. The officiant blinked. Mia's smile tried to hold. "Ethan," I said, and the name sat sharp on my tongue. "I loved you in all the ways I knew how. I loved you on cheap Thursdays and expensive Mondays. I loved you when you told the truth and when you dressed other things up as truth until they looked like it. On the way here, someone showed me a different story you wrote for today. A transfer, an addendum, a way to make our marriage into math you could balance in your favor." A sound went through the room, the kind glass makes when it decides not to break. I'm not here to punish you, I continued. I'm here to not marry you. Silence, the kind that grows teeth. Far back, a child asked a question no one answered. The officiant's mouth opened, then closed. Ethan's face did, the thing faces do when the script burns. He stepped toward me. Hand out, Ava, let's talk privately. I said. We will. I owe our guests a different kind of truth. I turned to them, my mother, whose tissue was now a flag of a different country. My father, who had driven 12 hours because planes scare him more than feelings. Friends who had carried furniture upstairs with me, co-workers who had covered my shifts when grief visited uninvited. I'm okay, I told them. I really am. You don't have to pick sides. You can still dance. There's cake. God, there's so much cake. A laugh cracked somewhere, small, and needed. I faced Ethan again. He looked like a storm realizing the house would hold. His eyes begged for the old ritual, the kiss on the forehead, the rescue. It's not what you think, he said, which is what people say when it's exactly what you think. I handed my bouquet to Mia. She didn't take it. I'm sorry, I whispered to her, and found I meant it in a way that surprised me. I should have been watching us better. Ava, she said, my name suddenly a thing she couldn't pronounce. You're overreacting? This is just. She searched for a word. Logistics. Of course, I said softly. Everything is, if you're far enough away. I stepped sideways, out from under the arch. Sophie moved too, not toward me but out of Ethan's line of sight, as if to tell me with her body that I wasn't standing alone. Take care of yourself. I told Ethan, because I didn't know how to say goodbye to the boy who folded napkins and the man who forged signatures in the same sentence. Then I walked down the aisle the wrong way, which turned out to be the right way, and out into a day that hadn't planned for me to be here. I sat in the bridal suite with my dress puddled around me like a decision. The room smelled like peonies and hairspray and something else. Shop, maybe. You think shop will smell like smoke. It smells like nothing. That's how it gets away with what it does. My mother found me first. She has hands the world trusts. She touched my cheek the way mothers check. If a fever is honesty or theater, do you need me to be angry for you? She asked. I need you to be hungry? I said. I promised people cake. She laughed and cried at the same time. God, you're my daughter. She pressed her forehead to mine. We'll get your things. We'll call the florist. We'll tell your aunt she can stop filming everything. Tell her to keep filming, I said. One day I'll make a movie and need stock footage of lilies. Only you, she murmured. Sophie knocked before entering. She had the envelope, now thinner. She set it on the vanity like an offering to something that believed in justice. I stopped the transfer, she said. I forwarded the addendum to your lawyer. I sent myself everything 3 times. Thank you, I said. You don't have to thank me, she replied. You just have to forget our last name. I won't, I said. I'll remember. It means don't. She smiled a tired smile. You're funny. He always hated that. We sat for a minute without saying anything, and I realized silence can be a bridge, not a canyon. In the hallway, I heard music. The band had taken my suggestion. People were eating. Someone had started the open bar early. Life, rude and beautiful, had decided to continue. Mia didn't come. I don't know if she stayed in the pew, if she ran after Ethan, if she called her notary boss to ask what happens when ethics put on heels and walk out. The story of her is a room I closed and sometimes open at night when the house is quiet, to see if anything inside has changed. Ethan texted at 3:12 p.m. Where are you? We need to fix this. Then, at 4:01 p.m. I didn't mean it like that. Then at 5:39 p.m. Please don't ruin me. I typed and erased 100 answers. I sent none. At 6:02 p.m., Sophie sent a single line. I'll handle it. I put my phone face down and let the world be someone else's problem for an hour. Later, when the dress was a white hill on the guest room floor, and I was a person in sweatpants, I opened the envelope again. Paper doesn't change when you look at it more times. People do. On top, Sophie had added a handwritten note. He learned early that love is a lever. You didn't break him. You just refused to be the floor. I taped that sentence to my mirror. The next week, my lawyer called to say we could move forward on forgery. He'll argue consent, she said. People like him always do. What happens then? I asked. Then we prove consent isn't a word you can bend until it fits, she said, and I fell in love with the law for an entire minute. I found a studio apartment with windows that understood how to make light feel like applause. I put the bouquet, now a little wilted but still trying, into a thrifted vase. My mother brought soup. My father fixed the squeak in the front door with the same solemnity he had brought to learning how to text me hard emo. Sophie sent a lemon tree, small and stubborn, with a card that said, "For the greenhouse, you'll grow yourself." At night, I recorded my story into a cheap microphone. I didn't say names. I didn't have to. Pain knows itself without ID. I posted the episode. People listened. They wrote back with their own almost marriages, almost crimes. We made a choir out of warnings. A month later, a local business journal ran a short piece. Pier and Pine Consulting under investigation for fraudulent transfers tied to wedding events. The photo was a building pretending to be legitimate. The last paragraph mentioned a whistleblower. I didn't need a name. Ethan sent one more text. I'm sorry. I believed he was sorry the way rain is sorry when it stops in the middle of what it was doing. I blocked his number. The block wasn't revenge. It was a boundary wearing lipstick. If you're waiting for a happy ending, I don't have one to spare. I have something better. I have a life that belongs to me again. I have mornings where the first thing I feel is mine. I have a kettle that learns my moods. I have a lemon tree that will someday forgive me for not being a greenhouse. If you're waiting to hear whether I regret him, I don't. I regret the part of me that thought love meant being a floor people could stand on without learning how to balance. I regret the day I called manipulation logistics because someone pronounced it well. Do I miss him? I miss the boy in the coffee shop. I miss the napkin. I don't miss the man who used my signature like a skeleton key. If I ever get married, it will be under an arch built by people who know wood better than they know spin. My vows will be short. Not because I have no language left, but because I trust simple words now. I choose you. I choose me. We choose the truth when it's convenient, and especially when it isn't. I didn't marry him. I married myself to the version of me that walks away when the math doesn't add up, and the love doesn't either. I married the woman who opens emails even when the subject line is a hand on her shoulder. I married the life where I don't need a witness to mean it. And when I passed the venue a week later to drop off a thank you card for the coordinator who kept the party going, I saw a couple taking photos under the eucalyptus. They looked like the start of something. I wished them math that balanced and funds that stayed where they belonged. I wished them a sister like Sophie, a mother like mine, a friend who doesn't notarize the exit. On my way home, I bought lilacs. My grandmother would have laughed and said I was practicing. Maybe I am. Maybe happy doesn't arrive with trumpets. Maybe it walks in like a woman in a silk robe reading an email and deciding her life is worth more than a dress. Either way, the lemon tree by my window is teaching me patience. It doesn't bloom because I ask. It blooms because the light and water agree. When it does, I'll make a pie and invite everyone who taught me to stand up. There will be cake this time too. Not to feed a room I'm performing for, but to celebrate a life that finally makes sense when I speak it out loud. Until then, I'll keep the note taped to my mirror. I'll keep the envelope in a drawer I can reach without asking for permission. I'll keep the joke with myself that I married a day and divorced an idea. I thought he was the love of my life. He wasn't. The love of my life is a woman who can walk down the aisle the wrong way because it's the right way, and still stop to tell the guests there's cake. The love of my life is me.